Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, my guest is Kathryn Foster, Ph.D. She's a psychologist in private practice in Fort Worth, Texas. She has a master's degree in marriage and family counseling and a Ph.D. in psychology. She's practiced psychotherapy for 27 years. I want to welcome to our show Kathryn Foster.
Hi, Susan. Good to be here.
You know, Kathryn, it's great to have you on because you wrote a book that a lot of people will find very important for them. Now, the book is called Memoirs of a Psychotherapist and Finding My Way. So would you tell our audience a little bit about why you wrote the book and what the book's about?
Well, those are both novels. And the first one, Sessions, Memoirs of a Psychotherapist, is about a Dr. Addie Conrad who meets Susan, a professional and mother with whom the therapist kind of identifies, but she's torn by traumatic childhood events. And she's more complex than originally met the eye because she's got colorful interior personalities. And then one tragic disclosure she makes plants the psychotherapist in much of a quandary. But the peak challenge for the psychotherapist in this book is Michael. He's a striking but narcissistic surgeon. And he finally, after a lot of hide and seek, he discards his emotional games and discloses his raw pain. And at times, the psychotherapist wavers under his seduction because he's very much that way, especially as her own marriage is crumbling. And she warms to Michael as he reveals his vulnerable psyche. But there's a lot of characters introduced in that book, and if you've ever wanted to, be in a secret room while therapy is going on, this allows you to do it.
Yeah. So you're saying that if there was a bug on the wall, a spider, for instance, it would be a great place to listen to some of the conversations that go on. Yeah. Now, Kathy, do you have the book in front of you?
I don't have that one.
Okay. So let's listen to, I want you to read, tell the people in our audience what the other one's about.
The other novel, Finding My Way, that is about a psychologist who has a lot of warm characters in her life. She's got a 40-year romance with a gentlemanly dance partner. She never marries him. They come from real dissimilar backgrounds, but they both love to dance. She also has a dream of owning a bed and breakfast overlooking the mountains of the state of Washington, and she persuades her best friend from childhood to create an elegant settlement with her. And this mischievous twosome run this bed and breakfast. And then she has a great-granddaughter who shares with Camilla a burdensome but essential gifting, and that results in a huge surprise for the main character, Camilla. And who would have guessed that a child of 10 would change really everything for her life?
Yeah. Now, we're going to talk about that book in another show, but let's go back to the first book. So why are romantic relationships so frustrating?
Yes. Now that comes from the book. This is a little confusing because I've written 5 books, but the book we're really focusing on is The Naked Truth About Men and Romance. And so, yes, why are they so frustrating? You know, we now know new things about the brain that allow us to explain the frustration, make sense of it. Imagine how, men were hunters, women were nurturers for 99.9% of human development, almost forever. And it's in these roles that our brain structures began, and we still have these brain structures today. We may live in modern life, but we still have those brain structures. So these roles affected men in at least 3 ways, okay? One is that men had to toughen themselves emotionally to kill and do battle. they had to suspend empathy, and that changed their brain structure. Now, we still have 179 remaining hunter-gatherer societies, and in those we know we can watch. It's overwhelmingly the man's job to hunt and make war. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, women were doing something almost opposite. They were giving birth, which hormonally flooded them with empathy. Mother Nature obviously had to do something to the woman to get it so that she could get into a baby's shoes and kind of read their mind. Mm-hmm. The second thing that happened to men is that when male hunters killed and pursued animals or enemies, their testosterone would rise sharply. That would also make their sex drives high. But it does a whole bunch of other things that most people don't know about. One is that it causes a person to be very self-oriented or self-interested, which is kind of opposite from empathy. So today, men have 10, 20, sometimes 30 times the testosterone that women have.
Right.
Now, as women were nurturing children, it was important their testosterone remained less developed, and that their oxytocin rose instead. Now, oxytocin is everything a baby needs. It causes you to bloom emotionally. It causes you to be giving and self-sacrificing. So it was important that her testosterone and her sex drive wasn't too high, because she needed to have a high-touch but non-sexual relationship with her children in order to stimulate their brain growth.
Right.
So that's the second thing, is the testosterone-oxytocin difference. The third is that men developed as silent stalkers of prey, using language in staccato factual ways. Mm-hmm. This is very different than women who formed communities with other women and coordinated things. So they talked quite a bit. And they also, as you know, in nurturing a child, you talk all the time, teaching them and helping them with their behavior and just teaching them, helping them. Mm-hmm. So we have a difference in terms of the use of language, in terms of the amount of testosterone or oxytocin, and in the way that emotion is, especially empathy. So therefore, romance actually becomes an agreement to meet the needs of someone with different needs. Right. Granted, male and female both like restaurants and movies and intellectual stimulation and having fun, but in the guts of the relationship, you find the essential differences, and that is what we have to consciously manage in order to be in a romance.
Right. Now, Kathryn, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. The men that you're talking about many years ago, of course, they had all the things that you attributed them to having, but today women are becoming leaders of the nations. Mm-hmm. I mean, look who's running for president.
Oh yeah.
And women are top heads of very important companies, really big companies. And they're and women are working. I mean, they're not staying home with their child as they did before. Mm-hmm. So, don't you think that they're sort of catching up to what men do, and they're starting to get their head and their brain to kind of be different than it was?
I think there are brain changes happening, and particularly in women, because women have greater plasticity in the brain, and so they are changing. Still though, women have much greater empathy. So I am expecting that as women take more leadership roles, that we will feel that we will begin seeing what it's like to have a woman in office who shows more empathy. I think that will impact us a lot. She also may nurture more, like nurture a staff, or we see this in management now that we've made great gains in what companies can do because of that nurturance. But she also may nurture the earth, and culture to make us a more loving culture.
Now, you're saying that a woman has more empathy. Now, it sounds to me like you think that women are sort of superior in many ways, but let me ask you this: men are staying home with their children now because sometimes their wives are getting better jobs than they can get, and so they're becoming nurturers too, don't you think?
They are taking on those roles. Now, like I say, they may have up to 30 times the testosterone a woman has. So testosterone actually impedes or cuts off oxytocin. And oxytocin is that thing that causes a woman to be giving and nurturing and so on. Now, I think, yes, I think changes are coming. But in a romance, now, and that's really what I'm talking about here, in a romance, a man and woman will find these differences that come down to brain structural differences. It comes down to what hormones are circulating through your body. One example of that, just real quick, is that a man's medial preoptic area, that's in the brain's hypothalamus, is 2.5 times greater than a woman's is. It's fed by testosterone. That's how it gets that big. And that causes a guy to have a greater desire for the sexual hunt. And that's why most self-help books tell women to let a guy, especially at the beginning of a relationship, pursue her. She might turn him off if he doesn't feel the hunt. Another part of the brain that's more active in males happens during sex and contributes to intense pleasure. Women have pleasure too, but men's is above that. So even if a woman is very sexually, even if she's in multiple orgasm, or she may value sex less than her guy does.
Right.
So these are a couple of the just fundamental things. You know, also in a relationship, today, from research going on today, we know that men are 4 times more likely than women to see sex and emotional closeness as the same thing. Now, women tend not to do that. You know, sex is something you do after you feel emotional closeness, and then the sex is kind of symbolic of that. She tends to separate those two out. But for guys, sex is emotional closeness.
Yeah, but isn't that changing too, Kathryn? Because, you know, you hear all these stories about men being very aggressive when it comes to sex, but with women, that's changing too.
It may be. She would have to catch up an awful lot. I mean, you know, because one of the reasons that he is that way is because he has an area of the brain that's 2.5 times greater, and he has testosterone that's 10 to 20 to 30 times greater than hers. So, yeah, there are changes, but goodness, it's going to take a while.
Oh, okay. Now you talk about men a lot, and I'm interested in knowing what unique gifts do women bring to relationships and to the world. I mean, women are very powerful people right now. So how would you answer that?
Well, we have actually hundreds of studies that show that women are more empathic. And part of what I mean by that is they have greater emotional responsiveness and nurturance. They feel motivated to extend help, to pick up on nonverbal cues, to read another person's unstated feelings. You know, Darwin, back in 1871, when he was observing all of nature, including humans, he said the female gender is more tender and less selfish than her male counterpart. And when you think of, he just said, when you think about it, if any female failed to respond quickly to the stress of her little one, she would lose them. So Mother Nature sensitized her. Right. And that empathy includes the female brain having a more affiliative or relational style. It just has to do with her neocortex capacity, while males have a more competitive style, and that relates to his subcortical units. I don't mean to get all that technical about the brain, but it is important to understand that all this is founded in the brain. So a woman may seek closeness while a man may gravitate to power and competition.
Now, in different countries around the world, are men and women different from the people that we have here in our country? Because it seems to me that there's a very different style of life, very different attitude, different cultures, and all of that probably contributes to the way they deal with each other.
Certainly.
Well, so how do you explain that?
I think culture has an effect, It's just that in a romance, even in the United States, you will find a difference. In fact, one of the reasons I wrote this book is because of things that I heard men and women talking about in therapy over, almost 3 decades, but also the fact that 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women. And I think that has to do with women come into a romance, and it's not what they had expected. And if I may, Susan, that kind of goes back to childhood. The genders mostly develop separately until sexual urges compel us to become intimate. So we kind of go from nothing to so much. And it doesn't give us a chance to understand the motives of the other. So as kids, oftentimes the boys and girls don't like each other that much, and they separate into same-sex groups. So girls focus on each other. Their dialogue tends to be rich in the center of things, and they make self-disclosures, which is the key to becoming better friends. The boys are doing something that's quite different. And remember, I'm saying all this carries over into romance. Boys tend to play in groups, center around a competitive activity. And in that competitive activity, conversation is minimized. They establish hierarchies. And personal revelations are really discouraged. You're not supposed to appear weak to get on the team. So our expectations of all this, of what happens in romance, really comes out of our childhood. Women expect men to give what they give, emotional closeness through dialogue and empathic listening. That includes tuning in so they can ask relevant questions, being patient and attentive and watching for the rise of feelings as the other person talks, and staying with a speaker verbally and non-verbally and listening for changes. So what that translates into is adult females often trying to draw men out to get to their real feelings.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's talk about women again. Now, what can women do to be successful with men? Because nowadays there seems to be many more women than there are men, and marriage seems to be, well, I don't want to say over, but so many people are just having children out of wedlock. And so I want the women in our audience to understand how they can be successful with men. And it's interesting if we tell men how they can be successful with women.
Well, let's start with the women first. I think that if she signs up with a guy, she's making, at least in his mind, an unspoken agreement to be sexually available and sexually attractive through the length of the relationship. It doesn't mean she can't age. It just means that she's continuing making attempts at looking well and being available for a sexual relationship.
Let me stop you here, Kathryn. This is one of the things that I think is really very difficult and very sad in a way. Women have to be young and look young and dress young, but men don't have to in order for there to be a sexual relationship or any kind of relationship. Why is that?
Well, most of the guys that like I see in therapy would just be happy if the woman was interested sexually. It's the interest. And again, that has to do with how men their brains cause them to see sex and emotional closeness as the same thing. Almost seeing a relationship with a woman or a romance in sex as the same thing. And a man can be incredibly disappointed, hurt, if that part of the relationship wanes, and he tends to lose motivation and to give her the emotional support that she wants.
Yeah.
I think there's some other things though that women can do. I think especially women, and the book The Naked Truth About Men and Romance is really written for women. Mm-hmm. That they need to educate themselves about the differences, because the differences hit them the hardest. And in understanding the brain structures, which may be changing, but minutely, I would say, because evolution takes a long time.
Yeah.
They can adjust their expectations and structure and broaden their lives so they get all their needs met. A person always has to remember to be their own best friend and see to it that their needs are met and be in charge of their own well-being, and never put that into the hands of a man or hands of anybody. Yeah. So, but another major area, it has to do with talk, because testosterone makes a guy's brain efficiency-seeking. Mm-hmm. So if she comes to him and she has a lot of feelings to present, she needs to sort out what her bottom line is, or he's going to be spending his whole time trying to figure it out and not really hearing the rest. And the bottom line will be what it is she wants him to do, how he can be successful, because testosterone causes a guy to go around looking for wins. When he wins, I mean WINS, mm-hmm. his dopamine goes up, and then his testosterone goes up. So he feels good and he feels masculine. Mm-hmm. So in a relationship, there has to be ways that he can win with her. Now, she often has to tell him that. I wrote a second book, Susan. Let me just mention it quick. Sure. It's called What Women Want Really, and I'll be presenting on that with you in March, right? But
correct.
That book I wrote after this one to kind of give couples a way to learn this stuff and integrate it into the relationship to make the relationship successful. That book is a handbook written really to appeal to men, because men don't typically read self-help books. Mm-hmm. Those are sold to women. And it's probably women who will buy What Women Want Really. Okay. But the book is meant to be read a couple times a year by couples. And it allows them to get these ideas on track, and it allows him to ask her some discussion questions so she can really reveal what she needs.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's just go back for a second to the sexuality of men and women, but I want to talk about older people, baby boomers, for example. Now, the testosterone, as you've mentioned, seems to be part of a young man rather than an older man. And also, with regard to women, when they've been maybe in a marriage or in a relationship for so many years, something happens to their sex drive. It dies. It seems to die.
Sure, it does. The testosterone does go down, which by the way can cause a woman to like a guy better.
Oh,
he can often become more relational and more domestic during that time. So that it's not all bad. And couples, baby boomers and beyond, have to adjust their sexuality so that there's more cuddling. They may not expect an orgasm until they've been sexual together 3 times or something like that. And of course, we can't skip the number of baby boomers who are taking testosterone supplementation and using Viagra and Cialis and stuff like that, because that makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have learned a lot from you. I want to say thank you so very much for being on the Susan Brender Show. Now, if people want to get your book, Kathryn Foster, how do they do that, and how do they talk to you if they need to get more information?
They can just go to, of course, to Amazon.com and put in The Naked Truth About Men and Romance, or What Women Want Really. You can also go to my website, which is KathrynFosterPhD.com. And Kathryn is Kathryn. And there, if you click on books, it'll take you to all 5 books.
Wonderful.
And then it'll switch you over to where you can buy them if you want to.
Well, just for curiosity, before we finish our show, is there something in store? Are you writing another book? Are you teaching all about this subject anywhere around the world?
I'm doing a lot of radio shows, and then, Susan, this may sound crazy, but I have just finished a musical, and it's about two people who have dissociative identity disorder, or what we used to call multiple personality disorder. And it's very colorful. Some of the characters are the inside people.
Oh. And
this kind of comes out of 27 years of having worked with people with that disorder.
Right. And are there many
I'm excited
people?
About it.
I bet you are. It sounds great. Well,
yeah.
Anyway, we're going to speak to you again in March, and
yes.
I want to say thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show, Kathryn Foster. You're a very interesting psychologist and just an interesting person in general.
Thank you so much, Susan. It was great to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.